What prompted this and why we wanted to do the town hall is Merrick and I have been meeting over the past, I want to say 4 or 5 months with all of the clinical department heads who have residents in their departments. And we've kind of gained all of their perspective on the current programs offered by the OVDR, and then we wanted to hear from the residents. So I think we've got maybe one resident here, so you are going to tell us what you think. Departments would like to see more control over their resident research operating funding is some of the feedback that we got. And so my question to this would be, fine, but how should we distribute it? Because if we do it on a per capita basis, there's one particular department that's quite a bit larger than all of the other ones, and so it gets most of the money. So should we continue just to do it on per capita, or should we distribute it on a project-by-project basis still, or how should that be done? So I'm just looking for advice on a model on how to distribute it, whether we should stick with per capita or whether we should change it up. It was also, part of the feedback was that they still wanted some sort of awards to be offered through the OVDR because it allows the residents to put it on their CVs. And so we were kind of thinking of still doing that Vice Dean's Prize, which we did at the end of last year's budget. I think it was in March or April. And that was just a department's nominated residents, and we gave the resident actual money. So it wasn't operating funding, it was an award. And then other feedback that we got was to coordinate a comprehensive College of Medicine poster day. There's currently a College of Medicine poster day for residents that's offered by ANUREG's office. However, we were kind of discussing how to make it more prestigious. Maybe we would make it an invitational thing so that the residents who excel at their departmental poster days would be invited to this College of Medicine poster day. So that was another piece of feedback we got from our meetings with departments. So the current programs are the Resident Research Award, which is operating funds. They're $2,000, and the recipients for the last round of this were just notified. The rules around it are they have to submit a project. We are tied to to the fiscal year for this. If we don't get it off by the end of the fiscal year, they have to lose the money because we lose the money. And so that's kind of one of the areas that's a drawback to doing it the way that we're doing it now. It's also we've got feedback either just to cancel this program and distribute the money to departments, or to change it up, make it for $5,000 and make it more competitive. Lots of feedback. So I'd like to hear more about what people were wanting to see about that as well. And then the Vice Dean's Prize is the one that's given directly to residents. So those are our current programs for the residents. I am now going to, so at the first town hall, we had 2 residents present. Unfortunately, they both have, I want to say, some sort of a learning half day. I don't know, I might be making that up. But they can't be here. So I'm going to give a summary, with their permission, on what they presented at the last one. They are Drs. Amanda Hall and Jeff Gu, and they are CIP. We're both part of the CIP program. I'm not sure, is Jeff still in it, or is he done?
They're both done their research component.
Oh, okay.
There's sort of 2 components to the CIP. One's the research component, and the other is the clinical. And when they complete both, then they get the recognition.
Oh, okay.
So they both finished their research component.
They're both done their research components, and now they're back into their clinical component. So some of the positives that they said was that residency programs in the college were really encouraging, and there was non-College of Medicine experts who were eager to collaborate with them. There was a lot of grant opportunities. They said that they really liked that there was access to unique facilities, such as the synchrotron, the Vet Med College, and they had good assistance from research coordinators and statisticians. So they are both part of the Department of Surgery. And surgery has a pretty good complement of research support staff, so that's from their perspective that they really appreciated having that support. The challenges, their number 1 challenge was time, and their second challenge was how to get through the steps of the projects. So basically the kind of initiating the project, knowing what's feasible and all of that was kind of tough. But again, the research support staffs should be able to help with that. Why do research as a resident? They said that you can develop critical thinking and evidence-based medicine skills. You better understand the science behind clinical decisions, which is really important. You learn more about an area that interests you. There's an opportunity to collaborate with experts outside of a particular niche, so you can collaborate with different departments. You're strengthening your CV, and they said it was fun. It's not my word, it's theirs, but it is. Final words from them is they said that if you're interested in research, express that interest, let people know, get a good mentor, collaborate, focus on something that you're passionate about, and don't give up. So I know that back here they said that the biggest challenge was time, and I'm assuming that that would be very difficult based on what I know about people's residency training schedules, but they have said to not give up and to persist because it's worth it. So they gave me their emails and said that if anyone had questions about this program, that they are welcome to contact them. So if any of you wanted to get these emails from me at some point, please feel free. And Amanda and Jeff have both said I can give them out, and they're happy to answer questions. Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you want this?
Yeah, sure. My name is Grant Miller. I'm the program director for the Clinician Investigator Program. I'll just mention about Jeff and Amanda. So in the Clinician Investigator Program, residents are able to step out of their clinical residency and do graduate studies. And ideally what is a sort of perfect scenario for them is for them to do research within their field, their clinical field, so that the kind of goal is to develop clinician investigators or clinician scientists. Amanda and Jeff both started off in master's programs, and after a year were able to transfer to PhD, and Amanda was successful, and Jeff is hoping to defend his thesis this spring, I hope. As I mentioned, this is for Royal College residents. So residents that are in family medicine aren't eligible for this program because it's run by the Royal College, which is our specialty college. And really, it's part of kind of a national strategy to increase the number of clinician scientists in the country. Our program is relatively new. Some of the programs have been are quite well established and have a large complement of trainees. We're quite small. We only have 2 trainees per year, 2 new trainees per year, I should say. The idea is to combine, or is to help develop them in terms of being able to combine research and clinical activities, and hopefully encourage them to become clinician scientists. So for most of the residents in the residency training, they're told they have to do a research project, and it's part of the Royal College requirements for most programs. And the residents will all tell you it's very hard. They're trying to figure out how to be a specialist, and at the same time they're trying to do a research project, but it's something they can kind of do off the back table in their spare time, which is challenging. And so for those that are really interested, this is the opportunity to really have protected time to really sink their teeth into what research is about. And we do encourage them to do some clinical activities, but we really protect them, and they're only allowed to do 20%, which is equivalent of about 2 months, and the other 10 months they're required to be protected for research. In the end, once they get their graduate degree, they've met all the requirements of our program, and they get their Royal College certification in their clinical specialty. At that point in time, the Royal College recognizes them as a clinician investigator. So they get to use that designation, and the Royal College roles have them listed where their name is as their clinical specialty and as a clinician investigator. As I mentioned, the people that are eligible are only Royal College residents, but residents in any Royal College program or fellowship, although it's not quite clear to me whether those that are doing smaller programs other than residency are eligible, but primarily it's just for residency. But as I mentioned, it's a master's degree, a PhD, or postdoctoral studies. So if we do have a resident that already has a PhD and they're interested in doing postdoctoral studies, we haven't done that. There are some challenges to setting that up, but we'd be more than happy to work through those. We prefer if the residents enroll in their graduate studies at U of S, only because I think we should promote our own university. And but on a purely selfish perspective, administratively, it's a lot easier if they're here. We prefer that they do a master's degree, preferably thesis-based, because the whole idea is to learn to be an investigator. But we certainly have residents that have done non-thesis-based master's degrees. The funding is only salary funding. So the residents are funded at the salary level, their postgraduate year salary level that they were at when they go into the CIP program. And they're kept at that, I believe they're kept at that salary level until they come out. So they don't have to worry about that. Now, in terms of operating funds, again, part of being an investigator is learning how to apply for grants and how to get grant money. And so, we encourage them to go through that process. So the residents that have done it tend to do it kind of in the middle of their residencies. And I'm not exactly sure why, but except that seemed to be when the trend was. And so everybody was sort of applies around their third year. But you can actually do it at any point in time. In fact, there is actually a Royal College program where somebody can come into their clinical residency having been matched into the clinical residency and CIP program. I don't know exactly how that works. We haven't done that. But you can do it at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. We have you can enroll in the CIP program. The Royal College will let you enroll in the CIP program up to 6 months after you've finished your residency training. Just a little bit about the clinical. So we have to protect the residents. We were actually cited at not the last Royal College review, but the previous one, because the residents were complaining about being made to do clinical work, which was interfering with their research. And so the Royal College doesn't like that. We've sort of established that they are not required to do call, except when they're doing a clinical rotation. And they should do call just like anybody else on that clinical rotation. Now, some of them will choose to do call because they want to keep their hands in. And that's fine. We don't want them being coerced into doing call. It should be voluntary. And that seems to be working out so far. I think for some of the smaller residency training programs, though, that can be a bit of a challenge in terms of service coverage. So some of the residency training programs have a requirement for residents to spend a certain number of months in research. And certainly if they go into the CIP program, that time should obviously count towards their requirement within their clinical residency training program as well. However, I always encourage the residents to make sure that that's clarified with their program director. And I should mention that their clinical time that they do should count towards their requirements in their clinical training program as well. So just to give you an idea of what some people have done, we've had both masters and PhDs in community health and epidemiology. The health sciences program has, we've had residents do both masters and PhD currently have a resident doing a master's in anatomy and cell biology. We have a resident right now who's doing a master's of arts in health leadership through Royal Roads. This is a course-based master's degree. It's a distance learning program. This is a resident that actually finished his anesthesia residency and was actually planning on doing this and then found out about the CIP program, and so it's worked out well for him. We have one resident doing a Master's of Education, or has done a Master's of Education, Health Professions Education at Johns Hopkins University. And again, that's a course-based distance learning program. I have had a couple of residents contact me who have, on their own, started doing a master's degree course-based by distance learning. Found out about, I had one resident call me and say, I was just going to do this on my own, but I'm finding that it's a lot more work than I expected, and could I go into the CIP program? And unfortunately, if you've already started your master's degree or your graduate studies, you have up to 6 months. Beyond that, the Royal College won't let you enroll in the CIP. We do have a website or a link, a web page, I should say, on the College of Medicine website, and there's some information in there. I need to update the course manual or the program manual, and my contact information is there. And if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Thanks.
What's the time frame for protected research time? Is it 1 year, 2 year, commitment?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, good question. So the Royal College requirements for CIP is a minimum of 24 months. So they have to do 2 years. So some of the so I had somebody contact me about a 1-year master's program, and I had to tell them it's you're certainly welcome to do it, but it doesn't qualify for the CIP. CIP has to be 24 months. So for those students that have gone into a PhD program, we've been able to, that's 36 months. And it's pretty tough to do it in that period of time, to go from, to switch from a master's into a PhD and get that all done within 36 months. But so we've had 2 residents that have been able to get a little bit of extended time in order to do an extra year and get it within 4 years, which is pretty good. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I guess there's no one else on the website, so I don't have to speak to the microphone. Because I see another rack maybe ask you.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. Oh, I think we should just increase the number of seats in CIP, and then we're done. Really. No, but perhaps you can start there. So the CIP program actually is the one, I shouldn't call it CIP program because P stands for program. CIP is really, it started a while ago, and initially we did entertain the request of some of the residents to do Masters in Education and Masters in Leadership. But really the intent was to have like real hardcore science, which is applied to medicine and surgery. But that trend has continued, and at some point in time, we'll have to have a discussion on what is the scope of this program. Do we want to continue in this manner, or should we be finding other opportunities for Masters in Education and Masters in Leadership or not? But that's an ongoing discussion at this point in time. CIP, the Ministry of Health actually funds 2 seats every year. Sometimes, so we can actually ask for, and sometimes they do acquiesce to our requests, and they can, at one point in time, they gave us 4 seats for one particular year, but usually it's only 2 seats they give us. We have only Ministry of Health funding for this program at this point in time. Occasionally we can argue for, and I think one time we have been successful in trying to get a funding from other sources, but usually it's just the Ministry of Health. And their argument is based on their assessment of the needs in the province, which trumps every other argument. Okay? Having said that, all residents are expected to do some kind of research during their residency, and it is stated in the objectives of training, the Royal College documents, and that is a requirement. And most residents do some kind of a quality improvement project in general. But if you want to do more than that, you are welcome. The protected time will be provided, but usually, as you identified earlier, and you identified that funding is really a problem, and how do you do this, and who's going to supervise those things, and the content they're expected to learn is way too much. But anyway, having said that, there is a definite basic requirement for doing at least a small research project before you finish your residency. What we have done, in addition to CIP, is occasionally we'll get requests from programs for some specific project a resident may want to do in the final year of their training, and they may either want to do it in Saskatchewan or go somewhere else or do it as part of a fellowship. But because we do not have funding, we usually go to the Ministry of Health. And the Ministry of Health, based on their need for that particular specialist in the province, oftentimes say yes to that. So we have had quite a few residents who have finished their fellowship training or their last year of residency with some research, either in Saskatchewan or elsewhere. So I think it will be an important point to convey to the residents that those funding opportunities are available, and if nothing formal is available in your program or on PGME or CIP, that should not refrain you from approaching us or anybody in the college to say, you know, what other opportunities might be there. Right? So that's the other one. The ministry is actually quite open at this point in time to funding research in health services. So again, that is a scope question as to, you know, where do we actually fund research for that? So for instance, if somebody in internal medicine wants to do research in improving some aspect of health services, then they would consider that request outside of CIP, because that's a formal 2-year program. But if we can say, well, you know, you can do only 1-year training program in this and you can do your master's, then they would be open to that idea. So the long and the short is that there is a formal CIP open to Royal College programs. There is a basic support available for departments. A lot of it depends on Dr. Radomski's office, because the research money comes from there, not from us. We only provide money for basic training and acquisition of clinical skills, but there are opportunities available if you are really interested in pursuing something. Okay? So that's where I will stop and see if you have any questions. I don't know, Vivian, at some point in time you can talk about if there was any possibility of the R3 program in clinician scholar, like which the family medicine allows. So anyways, but that's where we are at this time.
Thank you. I guess now we have arrived to a discussion and a question time, and maybe without putting on the spot our resident friends here, although they are most welcome to ask any time. If you want to kick off, you are most welcome. If not, I will try to prop let's say more senior colleagues on the audience. Maybe I will try to pose the question which I also started the first town hall. How do you feel about the programs that we administer from our office? Are they adequate? Are they adequately resourced? Do they meet the expectations, or maybe something needs to be changed? And just to remind you what Paddy reviewed for me, we had a mixed response to this question. Some people believe that the awards, Vice-Dean Research Award, should be maintained because it's prestigious and it could and carries some weight on a CV. And some people also were very much in favor of adding whatever money we can have in our budget to the departmental budget and allowing the departments to run the programs the way they see fit. So with all this explanation, I will still put you on the spot. My apologies. What do you think?
So I'm Uzair Ahmed from neurosurgery. I'm actually in the CIP program, and I would say that there is a probably a conflict of interest in that I just got funding from the Office of Research, the resident funding. So thank you very much. My experience applying for that funding was, and talking to some other people who were considering applying for the funding, I think the biggest question I had, or the biggest difficulty I had, was justifying a budget for that funding, because it seemed, and in the end, it just fit in that we asked for money for the research project that I was already had ethics approval and already was about to start, and fund some of that research project from that funding source. But beyond that, if I were not in the CIP program, if I were not already part of a bigger research project, I think I would have had a real difficult time coming up with a budget justification and putting myself in the shoes of someone who is not doing a lab-based project. I think it would have been very difficult to come up with a budget justification for that sort of money, because most research that I can conceive in my mind either requires no funding whatsoever or requires, quite significant infrastructure or other costs that would not be covered by that and would otherwise just not be feasible without some other significant source of funding. So from that perspective, I'm not sure how viable of a funding source that would be to all residents who, say, have a research project. Having said that, I did, the day before I think a few days before that grant was due, I was talking to one of my colleagues in general surgery who had previously done some research, lab-based research, and was talking about her research, saying that they just needed to do some more stains, which were quite expensive, but they were just looking for some funding for that. So I recommended her to apply for this funding source. And so, potentially there are people, but I think where this sort of funding would fit in best is if someone already has a project that they're undergoing and they need some supplemental funding for that, or it's essentially a bonus. But I don't know if it will be very valuable source of funding for people coming up with their own brand de novo project. So that was my feeling about that funding source.
So what would be your suggestion?
And so that's, again, very difficult. I'm not sure what I would suggest, to be honest. I think one thing that I could say is I think maybe more flexibility, because in terms of, so I know that the maximum allowed for travel in that funding was about $500, and I know that a lot of people would say do a charge review project, which they fund or they don't need any funding for, but then if they're able to use that money towards travel to present that research somewhere, I think that would probably be a valuable use of funding. So maybe.
Okay, so name of the game is flexibility. Great. Right, it's okay.
We were determining $500 was because there was departmental money for travel, we were told, and so that was kind of told to us that don't let them just use it all for travel, make them use it for operating funds. But that is not a rule that Merrick and I are attached to in any way, shape, or form. We were just told in some of the departmental feedback that it was they don't need more money for travel because we want them to access the departmental money for travel. But if that's not the actual case, we can change it up. We can make it more open for publication funding or something along those lines, if that would help. Sorry, Anuric?
No, maybe first I will.
Our other resident?
No, I was going to respond to that point. Okay.
Okay, no. So You're right. There are funds available in the residency budget for resident travel. Okay, so they can use it, but it is only for one conference per year, and it is never enough given the number of residents. So the more you can do, the better.
So we'll think about
Yeah.
it. Yes, please.
So I'm Melissa. I'm also in the CIP program, and I have also received a resident research award from your department. So thank you for that. But I think this reveals something in our community, is that the two residents who are here are both in, like, where you're preaching to the converted in a way, and that's one of the biggest struggles we have as a department and a group, I think, is that research. I think huge strides, it seems to me, have been made in the last 5 years. I've only been here for 3 years, but it seems like there's been a lot of really positive change. And I think we need to keep carrying on that momentum, because research is still undervalued, I think, as a whole. And I think a lot of, if people were interested, they would be here. And so I think the other thing is that your research funding needs to come from what your goals are. If your goal really is to become a robust research institution and have your residents doing great research, you need to both fund those who are doing excellent research and fund those who are wanting to do projects or wanting to do things and have the desire but just don't quite have the funds or the support. And so you need to kind of fund at both levels. And I don't know how that looks if you give, one prestigious award. Like right now, the people who are getting the resident research awards are those who have a lot of ambition and have a lot of support already. And I think you need to support them, but you also need to support the other guys who aren't doing research because they don't have those things. And so personally, I think doing something where maybe you give each program based on resident capita certain amounts of research funding, the residents have to prove that money is actually being used for research in order to access it. And if there's any leftover funding, then that goes back into a fund where you can then provide prestigious research awards to those who are doing great research and just needed additional funds, because then you're supporting both those levels. And I think that's what we need to try and do going forward.
So kind of a hybrid between the two models of dispersing it all to departments and kind of saying part of it can go to departments, but part of it we're going to keep in these prestigious awards for those who are wanting to excel in research. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's been also signaled in our first town hall. So I think we'll have now the mandate and support for the hybrid model. There's one thing that we were discussing in order, let's say, to somehow interest more colleagues, more residents in being more engaged in research, is that when I go to the individual departments for the research resident days, they're absolutely brilliant. I mean, I really love going there because the amount of engagement and residents giving the papers is stellar. It's absolutely exemplary. I just want to harness all of this somehow to a college-wide initiative. And one of the thoughts that I might ask you how you feel about this, maybe we should try in conjunction with the meetings that Dr. Saxena organized, and maybe we should have a winners of the departmental research days to present in a meeting that Dr. Saxena organizes as a part of the college-wide initiative, when you not only meet your surgery friends, but you will meet other residents that are interested in research, and it might be an attempt to make it more interdisciplinary. How would you feel about this?
I think it's a great idea, but I'm a bit torn. I like the idea of rewarding excellence and those residents who are doing good projects, but I also think collaboration amongst departments is essential. And so having maybe do something where the residents who have won their awards at their individual departments, they get to do like actual presentations.
Oh yes, of course.
Posters or something. So that once again, you're harnessing at both levels. And I think that's a big thing we need to try and do. So anyone who wants to apply can do a poster, and those who are the winners can present, so that people also get to see what great research looks like in the other areas.
But how many awards we gave this year for the resident research?
For the operating fund ones, we gave 15 this last round, and then can't remember how many in January. I think last fiscal year we were up to about 30, and then this last round we gave 15, but then we didn't really know where we were proceeding with it from here because we were waiting to do this. So
if I had to choose, I think I would say give it to the residents who have won the awards, and then you have a great group of people to present at that level.
Given that we have half of the residents in the College of Medicine in family medicine, or about that, my biggest worry is that we actually have only 2 years to accomplish tasks. And so when you're talking, like Grant was talking about, in the 3rd year they would start, and that's great, and I support that. But my biggest thing is that they need to start within the first month that they begin their residency to actually achieve an outcome 18 months later. And so as a result of that, when we're having these college-wide approaches, the dates are before our resident research day frequently, and that creates a big problem for us because we don't have anything yet until research day arrives. And so ours is the very end of May or the very beginning of June of their 2nd year where they actually come and present their work. So I like the hybrid approach in terms of there needs to be money in the department, but many of our research projects engage community members in this process, which require funding for those community members to come and actually see their projects being presented. And so it's a very engaged approach versus just paying for the resident to go somewhere or do something, because you're right, Anurag, we use that funding that's there to allow that to happen. So I'm going to encourage us to think about timing of the day for the college so that, in fact, family medicine residents could come and present. We had 4 winners last year, all of which were focused on very different areas, but the overall winner just had their paper accepted for publication. So there's things happening, but it's just that we don't have time. And that's our biggest sort of pitfall. I'm going to go to Anurag's question. We would be more than willing to actually support a 3rd year in clinical scholar. We haven't had anybody who wants to apply. I'm into participatory approaches. So if there's a person who'd like to do this a project, I'm happy to work with them to actually make it work. And Brian Geller, who's the program director, and I have talked about that. But the reality is, if they're not interested, having a program is very difficult. So if somebody wants to come back and do it, I'm all for it. But it's really an interesting dynamic. So it's on our radar, like CIP, but it's a tough sell. So we're actually marketing to faculty and encouraging faculty to become engaged in a master's or a PhD level programs, because that actually is a better sell for us. So thank you.
So I think the last resident research day that Gayatri and I did, was it in June? I wanted to say it was June. But we have to keep in mind, and that's maybe something that's going to involve some forethought, is I believe that they're done at the end of June. So they would present at the end of May, and they would be done their residency at the end of June, and then they're gone. So we definitely have to think about timing and hit that sweet point, but it's going to involve kind of, if we are wanting it to be that big day that has all of the departments, I don't know when each department has their research day. So, and I also am not nearly a big enough deal to tell them when to have their research day. Merrick might be, but it still might be a bit of a tough sell. So if we can't get them to all have it before mid-June, it wouldn't work. So then it would have to kind of be whoever's done it can come. But
the all departmental research day, they seems to be in the spring.
Is everyone?
So, and they are actually not very much spaced from each other. I would say within the 6 weeks, you've got all departmental research days. So I hope it will not be that difficult to get people together. But coming back to the Viv's point, I would love to have the proposal from family medicine, which would suit you best. And if you want to shift to the faculty, that's one thing, but still would be great, even considering the fact that the duration of the family medicine is half of the usual duration. I think we must come up with something that would be useful, and I would greatly appreciate you guys advising us what's the best way, how to make it viable.
Well, I know they want to be part of it. It's just a matter of how do we actually...
Exactly. So anything works for you, we can, and you are very right. I think half of the residents in the College of Medicine are having a 2-year experience. So we've got to make it working. This is the conclusion from this one. Any other opinions and comments on this one, Grant?
So I think one of the things that actually would be nice would be to invite some of the residents, particularly those that have presented or winners at resident research, for instance, to come and present at Mingling Minds, for instance.
All right, that's a very good one. The Mingling Minds for you. Have you guys heard of Mingling Minds? Mingling Minds, we've got I think every month we've got the meeting over university club, and there are 2 presentations, short and sweet one from the basic and the other from the clinical scientists. And the idea is to really stimulate the discussion, which we try to stimulate with the help of the glass of wine. So I think it's a wonderful idea. I mean, we'll issue the invitations to residents and encourage you guys to present. An excellent idea. Thanks, Grant.
Well, again, I see it as that opportunity to sort of build that collaboration between the scientists and the clinicians, because you see them both there, and there's some opportunities to develop those collaborations. So I think that would be one thing to do. The other thing that I've come to really realize is that in our residency training programs, we don't do a great job with career counseling. And it's one of the things that the Royal College recognizes as well, and they're constantly after the programs to do a better job with career counseling. And this is really something that should be addressed to the program directors, but very early in the residency training, I think the residents need to think and start thinking about, okay, is this something I should do? How engaged do I want to be? I go to Resident Research Day for the Department of Surgery, and there's usually about half a dozen papers that are presented that I recognize immediately that these are master's quality research projects. So all they had to do was do the coursework, and they'd get a graduate degree. They've already done all the work for the research, but they're doing it just off their back table in their spare time. And it's kind of like an opportunity lost, because they didn't really think about it, but they ended up doing this fantastic project. Would have been great for a graduate degree. And as Uzair is acutely aware, in some of the clinical training programs now, like neurosurgery, to get a job now, you pretty much have to have a graduate degree. And that's kind of a discussion, I think, that has to occur very early in the clinical residency training. So something to think about.
And it is something that we do bring up with the med students at this point. So Merrick and I present to the med students every year. I do it twice. So I do it at the beginning of the year, and I talk to them about Dean's projects. And then Merrick comes and meets them in October, usually. I think we do that. And we try to drive home the fact that, like, in the world now, there is a research component during your residency. And so the Dean's projects are kind of like a nice jump into it, but we don't do it as much with the residency programs. But that's something that I'm open to if you are.
That's the one thing. The other thing that we are planning to do, and as we have now up and running our website, when there's a lot of information that you can access on, and we will also have some research presentations. We'll ask everyone, all the faculties, to give a 2-minute long presentation on their own research. So there will be a resource that you guys can access very quickly to know what people hopefully across the college do. So we'll try all sorts of the communications, but I think the most compelling always for me is a personal argument. It's now both of you are our emissaries for the things to go. Okay. Any comments regarding things? This one, Josh. I always put you on the spot.
One thing I would question is, I know it sounds like surgery has a lot of support for, say, statistics or getting people some help to get through things in their research. Lots of departments don't have that support, for example, statistics. And I know in our department, we go to Rhonda or the Clinical Research Support Unit, which they end up getting a lot of attention from different departments at certain times of year. And it's not just that, but it goes back to the early, not access, but early work with the residents as well. Somehow working with them, one of the challenges that was listed was how to come up with ideas, how to start working and getting into their research. Maybe they've got some ideas of what they want to do, but they don't quite know how to do it. Then they get busy on their other stuff and they don't really get into the research. So somehow connecting with them early on. I mean, in a perfect world, we could have mentorship with residents, walking them through, and you want to do research? Well, this is how you do it. We'll connect you with people who you're interested in or have similar interests with. And here are the people that are going to help you with the statistics. Here are the people that are going to help you with this and that, and go through the program. But lots of departments don't have some of those resources, and that's my one issue. So,
thank you, Josh. And I will not miss an opportunity to engage Dr. Stampian. James, what do you think?
In emergency medicine, we're quite enjoying our experience in research and sort of just building up our capacities. I do think that we're all finding that the more support we can get, the better. I like the whole concept of sharing, like the whole problem with medicine in general is our siloed approach to everything. And so I don't really know what research is being done in family practice or in surgery. And I think for us to have some sort of sharing either through resident research days or mingling of the minds or anything would help us with both our concept of what other people are doing and the increased collaboration that we all want. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, I think there are some really very useful points that we'll compile and then share, and hopefully we'll try to see what we can implement. Any other points? Anyone would like to comment, add, subtract, multiply, divide over what we have done so far? I just don't want to artificially extend the time of our meeting if there is no more issues to discuss.
I will just say as a final thing, especially for our resident friends, I have that email address set up, the resident.research. If you guys talk to people and they're like, oh, I totally had an opinion that I would have loved to say, but I missed it, just tell them to email that email address, and Merrick and I will continue to work to try and combine.
And we'll definitely distribute everything what we have found and ask for more. Certainly, we'll work with Dr. Saxena trying to enlarge our postgraduate research meeting experience with the winners and with anyone who would like to chip in. And it's basically let's keep on going and try to get across, not to converted, but also to those who are still not converted. So that would be the approach. With this one, thank you very much. Thank you.